The N64, I feel, was an important era of gaming. The birth of the N64 was the result of a failed relationship with Sony, as was the PlayStation. For those that don't know, Nintendo and Sony struck a deal to make a CD reader for the SNES. Sony worked their butts off and were excited to enter the video game industry. Their partnership was supposed to be announced at the Customer Electronics Show, but Nintendo went on stage and completely blindsided Sony by saying they were partnering with Philips instead. It's said they did this, or at least why they didn't want to partner with Sony anymore, was because in the deal, Sony had a lot of control over licensing and revenue with the CD formats that they would develop. And Nintendo, of course, didn't like that. But instead of going to them and striking a new deal, they went behind their back and made a new deal with someone else. It was a public breakup.
You're breaking up with me?
So Sony, with all this development done and no partner, they figured, let's make our own console. The Sony PlayStation. In 1994, 3 years after the deal was scrapped. Fun fact, the device that Sony and Nintendo were partnering on was going to be called the PlayStation. 2 words instead of the now 1 word. I don't know for sure, but I bet it was a loophole of some sort for Sony to make it 1 word instead of 2 to escape copyright. Also, I think it was just a big middle finger to Nintendo. Nintendo inadvertently created a new competitor / adversary, eventually pushing out Sega of the console wars because they just couldn't keep up. They also lost a bunch of third-party support. It was a whole thing. The N64 had some of the greatest games of all time, like Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and GoldenEye. Those, of course, are just some examples. A company that had worked with Nintendo on their previous console had developed some of the best games on the N64, Rare, formerly known as Rareware. They developed games like Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, Diddy Kong's Racing, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Perfect Dark, and GoldenEye. I bring up GoldenEye twice for 2 reasons. It was an absolute banger of a game, and not that it was the first-person shooter game, but it's credited with making the genre popular. Also adding new elements to the genre like varied missions, stealth elements, and local multiplayer that would become a staple for first-person shooters. The reason I wanted to do this video wasn't just because this was a sick console, but because I made a bit of an impulse purchase that I've kind of wanted to do for a while now, which really doesn't make it an impulse purchase if I've been thinking about it for a while, now that I say it out loud. The Nintendo Switch N64 controller. This thing feels so nice. Comparing the original to the new one, it looks pretty identical. The feel is pretty similar, so it doesn't look like they really updated much. Even like the buttons still feel exactly the same, which is nice that they didn't cheap out on it. Probably about 5-10 years ago, I bought a remake because you can't find brand new ones of these guys anymore. But this thing feels awful. The joystick's stiff. The D-pad feels awful. It feels like spongy, but not barely any give. The buttons are okay, but they're actually really stiff too. Like, there's like a fine line between being too stiff and not stiff enough. Where if I was mashing buttons on this, I'd be exhausted. I'd have massive thumb cramps. This and this are fantastic. Just the build quality of this it's actually very nice. And they filled in that obviously because you have no use to it. But on top, they gave you a ZR button, a home button, and to pair it, you just plug it in through the USB and it pairs right away. I bought it mainly because I have such good memories of that console with its incredible games and the time I spent playing with my friends. There's a bit of an uncertainty and controversy about this controller when it comes to, was it a good design or a bad design? I do feel with this design, they made the D-pad redundant. It's more so there because the last 2 console controller designs had it. So in my head, Nintendo wanted to have a link to the past controllers like a sign of evolution and not just a completely new thing. The reason why the design of this controller was controversial is due to it having 3 prongs instead of just 2 like others. Something I forgot about it was that the PlayStation didn't start off with joysticks, or analog sticks as they call them. It only utilized a D-pad for direction. They weren't introduced until 1997. I was thinking, why wouldn't Nintendo just steal from their design? Because the N64 didn't come out until 2 years after the PS1. I would say, in my opinion, that since there was bad blood between the two companies, Nintendo would do the complete opposite to whatever they were doing. So them doing 3 prongs instead of 2 would be classic Nintendo. But I would also say that Nintendo is the cause for joysticks making a comeback, in my opinion. I did read that Nintendo intended the N64 controller to be multifaceted between 2D and 3D games. You would use the left and right prongs, so you could use the D-pad and the left bumper for 2D games, and the middle and right prong, so you could use the joystick in 3D worlds. Because we were just entering the 3D era of games, they figured there would still be 2D games being made for the N64. So they felt the D-pad would still be a widely used asset of the controller, thinking it needed to be there. I still stand by my thought of them wanting to have a link to the past, but I could see both things being correct. I think the design of this controller is fine. It's not perfect. Actually, now that I hold it, it kind of feels like if the Z button wasn't there, it would slip right out of my hand from using the joystick. I would say it's more nostalgia that drove me to get these controllers. Yes, I bought 2. I found it easier to play GoldenEye with this controller, but I found to play Banjo-Kazooie, it was nicer to play with this controller. I would say this isn't the end all to be all, but damn, does this controller make you have a rush of nostalgia when you hold it. Some of you might say, why don't you just get your N64 fixed up to be able to play on the big screen? But it's nice being able to swap back and forth between Mario Kart World and GoldenEye. All right, I have a spending problem, okay? You happy? Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really enjoy talking about retro games. I also love talking about my Switch too, so there'll be more talk about that in the future. Also, for anyone that cares, I finally reached 1,000 subscribers, and I'm about to be monetized. I seriously can't thank you enough. I am one step closer to reaching my dream of going full-time on YouTube. I thought about making a dedicated video just to thanking all of you, but I feel like at this point, only the people that watch my videos to the end are actually excited for me. And I'm ecstatic for all of you to be here, so this message is just for you. If you happen to see this part of the video, give me a thumbs up in the comments so this can be like our little secret. Plus, I'm not going to waste your time on a sappy video. Not yet anyways. Maybe in the near future, we'll see. But for now, happy gaming everyone. Cheers.